Now on Newsday TV, more winter weather on the way. We're tracking snow and rain with the holiday travel rush underway. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jasmine Anderson. More on the weather coming up, but first, a holiday nightmare. A local charity is in desperate need of donations after it says hundreds of toys were stolen. The founder of Toys of Hope says thieves took the toys from its Huntington Station headquarters Saturday. Thousands more were destroyed due to vandalism and weather exposure. The estimated loss as much as $30,000. Police are investigating. We have info on how to donate on our website. A search for a hit-and-run driver that left a woman fighting for her life. Police say the 62-year-old was crossing Burnside Avenue in North Lawrence when she was hit by a dark-colored SUV Saturday night. She's in critical condition right now. See Newsday's year-long investigative series looking at Long Island's dangerous roads on Newsday.com. A Kings Park condo plan is one step closer to reality. Smithtown officials approved a zoning change that paves the way for construction of 288 units. Country Point Estates at Kings Park would span more than 70 acres on the corner of Old Northport and Lawrence Roads. Destination Unknown Beer Company in Bayshore is closing. Its owner blames rising costs and changing consumer habits. The brewery will stay open while it taps remaining inventory. Dozens of buses brought holiday cheer to children in need. Take a look at this. More than 50 buses were packed with toys and delivered to thousands of children yesterday by the Amityville nonprofit Kids Need More. It also runs a number of camp programs for families over the summer. Checking out your Monday weather, cold and dry today, but there's a wintry mix on tap for tomorrow, so get ready for it. Sunny and cold today, highs are in the upper 30s, but it will feel more like the 20s with the wind. A dusting of snow is likely overnight and into early tomorrow. That will turn to rain after tomorrow's morning rush. It's mild Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We're tracking more wet weather for Friday and the weekend. That's a look at your 7-day forecast.
Long Island weather is brought to you by PTRC.
The rising cost of beef may be tough to swallow for many steak lovers. Business reporter Tori Parrish tells us the impact of the cost of meat is having on shopping and dining habits.
Certainly costs a little more than it has in the past. I had to bounce around a little bit for my shopping. Otherwise, it would have been quite a bit more.
A little bit higher than last year, yes. If you do your shopping around, you can find it better prices here and there.
The wholesale price of beef is up 15%. Retail prices in some cases are up more than that, especially for like the higher end cuts of beef.
Hopefully for next year we'll see some reprieve in the prices on the red meat. Right now for Christmas, the prices are going to be a little bit elevated on the red meat.
Nationwide, beef prices are rising for several reasons, one of which is there are fewer cattle. The number of cattle in the U.S. is down to the lowest level since 1951. So the demand is still high, but the supply is low. So it's basically a simple answer of supply and demand.
We're offering you the best deal possible where the restaurant still makes money. And that's, again, going back to it, that's the adjustment we make. Now steaks have reached that $79, $89 threshold. So it's just a part of what's going on, and we have to adapt.
I did talk to some high-end restaurants that said they're still seeing people spend the same amount per check or per table, but people are coming less frequently.
We have cut down on going to the more expensive restaurants just because of the prices.
There's a lot of uncertainty in the economy right now, and people are just being more strict with how they spend their money.
Thank you, Tori. Read more about this story on Newsday.com. Click Get More below the Newsday TV video box.
Out East with Doug Geed is brought to you by EastEndGetaway.com. End up here.
A family-owned Long Island bakery is mixing every batch by hand and delivering sweet treats across the country. Let's head out east with Doug Geed.
Countries around the world all have their ethnic specialties at Christmas time. In Germany, it's Stollen, a yeast-based fruitcake. My grandmother used to make them all the time, and they make them here at Nettie's Country Bakery in Santa Mauritius. I'm Doug Geed, out east for Newsday TV.
I became a lawyer and said someday I want to retire from law and open my own little bake shop just for fun.
Joe McKeffey fulfilled his dream of opening a bakery, but his little retirement project turned into a bustling business.
It grew. It grew quickly.
Nettie's Country Bakery, named after his wife Jeanette, is certainly unique. On what was a former chicken farm, then later a garden center, McKeffey created almost a tiny farm village. There's the quaint bakery shop, plus a renovated barn where people can sit with their coffee and baked goods.
There's a wood-burning stove to keep it warm.
There's also a rustic stage of sorts, where in warmer weather they'll occasionally have live music with people sitting on the lawn on folding chairs. But as nice as the atmosphere is, it's the food that draws people in. And around the holidays, there's one big draw.
Cookies, 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 cookies. It's all about cookies.
And along with the cookies are items that Nettie's is most known for: brownie bites and cake bites, brownies and cakes that are cut into small pieces.
They're dipped in chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate, or dark chocolate, in what's called an enrober, where they go down a conveyor and then get soaked in chocolate and then continue. And they're different flavors, a lot of different flavors.
And they've gotten so popular that Nettie ships them all over the country, including Alaska and Hawaii.
We do a few sizes. The most popular is the 15-piece box. It's one of our better items, and it ships great. They last a long time. We package them nicely. It's a very nice gift.
And while people around the country get to enjoy Nettie's products, it's probably folks in the small hamlet of Santa Mauritius, where the bakery is located, who appreciate it the most.
The community is very supportive of us, and I like to think that we make that kind of contribution to them.
Santa Mauritius is where Joe McKeffey was born, where he practices law and still lives today.
It's memories. I remember when I was a kid working in the bakery, and the fathers would come in on Sunday morning with their little kids still in their pajamas often, and we see that here still. And that's one of the cool things about bakeries. It's kind of a happy business. People don't leave here with a frown on their face. They usually a smile.
In Santa Mauritius for Newsday TV, I'm Doug Geed.
This is what the season is all about. Thank you, Doug. For more on Nettie's and Out East with Doug Geed stories, go to Newsday.com, click Get More below the Newsday TV video box. Newsday investigates town and city employees across Long Island cashing in big paychecks. According to a Newsday analysis, more workers took home over $200,000 in 2024 than they did the previous year. Well, joining me now to talk more about this is Newsday Towns reporter Joseph Ostapiuk. Thad Calabrese, and he's the professor at NYU's Wagner Graduate School of Public Service, and Anthony Bazil, professor of accounting and taxation at Hofstra University. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Joe, I want to start with you first. How did you collect this data, and what did you find is fueling a rise in these higher paychecks?
Sure. So we use the state's Freedom of Information law to gather payroll information from each municipality on Long Island. The cause for the increase is multifaceted. We're seeing lucrative union contracts that secure very high salaries for their employees. We have state-mandated increases in pension and medical benefits. And then we saw a sharp rise in overtime last year. It was almost 10% across Long Island that drove up these payroll increases.
So many factors there. Anthony, I want to turn things to you. How do pensions and union contracts factor into all of this?
Well, pensions for municipal employees have what's called a defined benefit feature to it, which is a formula that's generally based on their last couple of years' earnings. So over time, when it's stacked in the later years, translates into higher pension costs, which, down the line creates enormous post-retirement benefit obligations for municipalities, so much so that many municipalities have much more in liabilities than they do in assets.
With that, can things like retirement incentives help reduce staffing levels?
Sure. Retirement incentives certainly can incentivize employees who are close to retirement to make the decision to retire. The issue is twofold. One, those incentives cost money. So some of what you will then see in the documents that were analyzed is an increase in cost year over year to pay for those employees to retire. The second issue is if you incentivize employees to retire, but they still are providing a needed service, you then have to replace the employee. Now, you might be able to replace the employee with a less expensive, younger employee than compared to the older employee who you just incentivized to retire. However, you still have that new cost, and to Anthony's point, then you also have a new benefit obligation for the new employee as well.
So how does a small staff affect the average taxpayer?
Well, if you have a small staff, it becomes more difficult to reduce staffing levels because you just have fewer employees providing the public services that towns, people, and taxpayers expect.
Gotcha. Joe, I want to bring you back into the conversation. There are unique circumstances to each city and town. Maybe go over a few of those for us.
Sure. So in Riverhead, they had high overtime numbers last year. That was driven by not having enough police officers. They expect that number to come down this year after they expanded their force. In Babylon, they made a new litter removal program that also drove up overtime numbers. And in Hempstead, they instituted a retirement incentive program that they say will help reduce staffing numbers over time, but in the immediate, it drove up those numbers as well.
Anthony, are there dangers to increasing in overtime pay across Long Island?
There is, because what happens in a lot of circumstances, overtime is generally a short-term solution. Unfortunately, because it's become so rampant, it's becoming part of the budget and the expectation of how to run a department, right? So you're not hiring enough people, so you need more people. It results in if you're going to do something about it, it generally results in a reduction in services or an increase in taxes. And with the overtime, again, with the pension structures that most municipalities have, the inflated overtime becomes part of the ending earnings of that employee, which calculates into a long-term pension obligation. You know, people are living longer. So, you know, a lot of these obligations, you know, and I don't want to pick on any one or the other, but if you take police officers, for instance, a lot of them retire in their 40s and live into their 80s or 90s with very long-term pension obligations when, you know, the life expectancy when these things were originally thought of was really 15 years maybe after retirement, and that's it.
It's hard to believe. Well, could depending on overtime payments instead of paying additional employees save money because of averted benefit cost, Thad?
There is an argument to be made that overtime is appropriate when you have short-term or sporadic need for additional work, that paying existing employees overtime rather than hiring a new employee would be cheaper than paying an entire employee and then having to pay for benefits for the new employee. Really, the issue is when the short-term solution of using overtime to try to manage staffing levels becomes the permanent solution. As Anthony alluded to, the intent of overtime is sound, it makes sense, it's rational. But what's happened is that it's expanded and become a larger part of the operating budgets of these governments, and labor costs tend to be the most significant part of these budgets. So you have labor costs increasing on an already large part of governmental budgets.
Gotcha. Well, Anthony, let's talk about how taxes and costs of living are tied into these high salaries.
Well, Long Island is one of the highest areas in the country to live, and the reason for that is the many layers that we have of government. We have 2 counties, 7 towns, I don't know how many different villages, but there are many. We have duplicative services. You know, there's the Nassau County Police Department, but then there's also the village of Rockville Center, the village of Malvern, the village of Garden City, and that's, you know, when you start looking at the duplicative services and the duplicative efforts that there are, we're just a very bureaucratic island that has increased the property tax costs, you know, exponentially over the years. So when we have these high, you know, salaries and pensions of municipal employees, it translates into higher taxes. And then the higher taxes create the need for higher salaries. So it's sort of like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
Yeah.
Well, Thad, are there ways towns and cities can try to rein in payroll?
Absolutely. As Anthony alluded to, there are many layers of government, especially on Long Island. One way to address payroll costs could be to combine shared services across these different governments. So, for example, rather than each city or each town or each county providing their own IT departments or their own payroll departments, they could share those departments across different governments. That would be a way to reduce a lot of the payroll costs that drive up these budgets, but also don't provide direct services to citizens of Long Island, such as the police department or the fire department.
Gotcha. Well, Joe, I want to end things with you. How are towns and cities defending these high salaries?
Government officials say one of the biggest factors in this is competition. They have to attract good workers that do these essential services, and they have to do it in a way that draws them away from the private sector. You know, they do that through these very handsome benefit packages. They do it by these salaries that we're reporting on today. You know, on the East End, for example, officials there say that they struggle to retain officers. They struggle to hire police officers just because of where they are located on Long Island. So that's a factor that those officials have to deal with, and the way that they address it is by giving, you know, pay that they feel is commensurate with the work that's being done, but also, you know, to attract them to government work.
Gotcha. Well, a number of reasons, Joe. Thank you, and a lot of perspective from our guest here. We want to thank you, Joseph, for your in-depth research and reporting, Thad, and of course, Anthony, for being here. We appreciate all of you. You can read more about this story on Newsday.com. See more on these stories on Newsday.com and watch us streaming anytime on Local Now, YouTube, and the other services you see here. I'm Jasmine Anderson. Happy holidays. More local news coming up.
Newsday investigates how 5 years after reforms, the use of force by police has increased, impacting black people at much higher levels. Use of force, now available at Newsday.com/force.